So just to try and encapsulate what John was like, in 1980-something, there was a boot full of stuff in the car park at Cemetery Pales. It looked a bit like that, AI is generated. And John picked up his Motorola phone that looked like that, and he said, one day, Andy, all of that will be in there. And I went, nah, that'll never happen, will it? For those of you who use Waze, you could, for example, get navigated to a place called Cemetery Pales, which hopefully some of you will remember working in. And that takes me nicely on to the work about microscopic modelling that we were doing in what I'd like to think of as the skunk works of Wootton Jeffries. Those of you who are in the garage block, those luxurious porta cabins, and then having to go to the Garibaldi pub for lunch to be fueled to keep us going. But we were starting to understand how motorways ran and how to control it. And John and various other people in this room were filmed for Equinox in 1988 to explain how traffic worked.
Back on the M25, Equinox 3 is still making slow progress. They speed forward for short bursts and then come to a complete standstill for no apparent reason. These phantom traffic jams are a regular puzzle for drivers on the M25. They are, in fact, caused by shock waves. Speeding up the flow of traffic shows how they occur. When drivers bunch together, they rely on fast reactions. If one car brakes, the drivers behind tend to overreact and brake progressively harder till they come to a stop. From the original incident, a shock wave is triggered, which can be seen to pass slowly back up the stream of traffic, bringing it to a temporary halt. Flow in these conditions is highly unstable and seriously reduces the motorway's capacity. If we plot the speed and volume flow of traffic in a morning rush hour, it can be seen that once instability sets in, speed and volume flow are both greatly reduced. There's an opportunity here for technology to intervene.
Once a jam forms, it's actually very, very difficult to make it dissipate. And you have to try and find ways in controlling the traffic on a motorway to stop that initial incident affecting the traffic behind it.
So the question was, could we model each individual driver's interaction and overreaction? Well, the answer is yes, because it's now called micro-simulation, except we didn't call it that then. We call it car following, so what a driver does behind relative to the car in front. And we had this idea that it would be aggressive drivers who wanted to go right up there, and assertive drivers who didn't do that. So we developed this program called System, SISTM, which was developed for what was TRL, and then as we've heard, John took that over and became TRL. And it was written in a language called Fortran, which I won't go into, but it ran on a 386 PC. Now, those of you who don't know how bad a 386 PC is, just imagine your worst ever mobile phone. It's probably 100 times faster than the computers we used. It could only simulate 100 vehicles at a time on a motorway, and it was all straight roads. So it looked a bit like a video game that was popular at the time called Frogger, where basically you had to get the frogs to cross the road and not be splattered by the cars. But it had the basic tools for modelling motorways and, more importantly, to learn how to control them. So what happened then was it was used for testing algorithms for what was called control motorways by TRG in Southampton, where John went on to lead, and some of you here today from. And that came up with the conclusion that if you're going to do speed control on motorways, you need red rings around it to mandate speed control. So I wonder whatever happened to that, eh? We assessed some ramp metering. We looked at the benefits of MIDAS. So MIDAS is a system that sets signals for queues. And then about 20 years ago, there was some work done by Southampton to look at designing what we now call ghost diverges. So where you're coming off the motorway and there's two lanes, those of you who are nerds will just see, oh, look, there's quite a good model there. There's quite a lot of work gone into that. But now, a micro-sim, as we call it, is used as a tool globally. There are a couple of commercial suppliers, but there's also an open source system. So I'd like to thank PTV and Aimson for this eye candy of what they can do today in terms of not just motorways, but urban networks, pedestrians, trams, ports, etc., but also use it for control as well as modelling, which we'll hear about later. And I did a study with Atkins in 2017 about modelling automated vehicle benefits using this kind of technology. And for those of you who work for Wootton Jeffries will know eventually it came into Atkins, so it's kind of full circle. We get some fabulous 3D fly-through animations rather than the 2D of Frogger. But it still needs really good input data, and maybe you can get that from cameras, and we'll come on to that in a bit. But it sometimes struggles for that motorway breakdown that you saw on that checks notes 37-year-old piece of video, because drivers are unpredictable. And one of the paradoxes is it's much easier to model autonomous vehicles because they're not unpredictable. So that's where we've got to, starting off with John. And what I'd like to do now is to pass over to Vittoria, who's going to talk from her company Immense Simulations about not so much where the past, but where we're going with microsim. So thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, I'm Vittoria Parisi, Head of Product at Immense. Immense is a product company. We use traffic simulation techniques to model the days in the life of places and assess the real impact of roadworks, diversion routes, on complex scenarios quickly and efficiently. So all the methods that Andy has described, they have improved, they are maturing, but they're still data hungry. But with the advent of the connected vehicle data and traveler insights from mobile handsets, we've been able to develop new approaches and adopt these approaches. So basically at Immense, we've gone from an old approach where we have siloed planning and operations to a new approach where we have an integrated solution. So we embedded these traffic simulation techniques into everyday tools that traffic operators can use to manage and plan the network. So we provide simulation as a service. So in the past, what we've done was building models, base models that would take several months to be validated and calibrated. And then by the time we got insights from these models, they would be already outdated. On the operation side, we would always rely on operators' experience and knowledge rather than on an evidence base provided by models. So with the new methodologies and the approaches that we've been developed and the data that now we've available, we're able to build base models quite quickly and provide these models in weeks rather than in months. And we then can provide insights in minutes rather than in weeks. So we've also built some tools that are accessible to modelers and non-modelers in order to provide quick insights and make the right decisions in an informed and timely manner. We've deployed our methods in both on the operation side and on the planning side. A recent example, which is worth mentioning, is the work that we've been doing with TfL, Transport for London, and some others on representing the travelers' decisions on the network when it comes to rerouting. And this has enabled us to provide streamlined assessment of where congestion hotspots might happen and where temporary roadworks might be needed. So in this video here, you can see like vehicles moving around, and there is like a road closure happening between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. in that particular location. And you see that when the closure happens, then there are two types of drivers, green drivers and purple drivers. The green drivers are the ones that respond to congestion around the network. So they're all, they are aware of the situation around the network, and they are the sat-nav type of vehicles that reroute much earlier, while the purple ones are the conservative ones. So the ones that actually take the route from origin to destination and they just reroute at the last moment. So this is just one example of how microsimulation techniques and travel behavior is important in this type of decision making. On the planning side, here is an example of how we've used simulation techniques to plan urban services in an island in the Middle East. And we've combined together travel demand data, multimodal transport, fleet operations, and transport network to come up with the best efficient options for the island per se. So where is the strength of these methods? The strength is in asking, what if? What if we change something? What are the effects and how big they are? So it's about comparing the do nothing versus the do something versus the do something else. The way we can do that is by is if we have only like good enough base models that we can build consistently, cheaply, and quickly. But that's always is currently the challenge. And the opportunity is to provide understandable results to operational decision makers so they can make those decisions in a timely manner. And this, of course, is all possible thanks to the early work led by John Wootton. Thank you.